magic of being able to create that bond, that connection with an activity, a person, a place, that's special.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, welcome into another episode of Sincerely Yours Outdoors. We're kicking it here with Gerry today. Gerry James. Beautiful day. How you guys feeling?
Liddy, as the kids say.
I love it. How about you, D?
I'm feeling good, man. It's been a good day. Kicking it with Gerry so far. Excited for the conversation.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff to come. Excited.
For sure. Yeah, and I'm feeling like a bag of money, like Rick would say. So,
Big beach.
we're going to have a lot of fun today. So, Gerry, tell us a little bit about where we are today. Like, set the scene for us conversationally, and we'll kind of get rolling from there.
Cool. Yeah, so we are in Frankfort, Kentucky, which is Kentucky state capital. Fun fact about like why the capital here is here. It's the quote unquote center of the state. You know, so they wanted to make sure that when they create the capitals in the center of state so that everyone could kind of ride to the capital equidistant from different side corners of the state and stuff. But yeah, so, you know, we're here in my garage. This is really pretty rad, like a whole little studio setup. I feel like, I don't know, like HGTV or something. But yeah, Frankfort's a great little town. Me and Allison have lived here since 2016. And we love it. It's right on the river, Kentucky River.
Yeah. We had a smooth little drive in today from Pittsburgh, but very scenic, gorgeous. We got to stop in and see some parks, so we're super hyped about that. So, Gerry, what do you like vibing to and kind of consuming at this moment? You know, music is wide open. I know Coach Chase is a little bit of music you vibe to, but what do you listen to? Audio, podcast, even books or audio adventures that you're going on?
Yep. Music wise, let me see. There's like new JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown album.
Okay.
Have y'all heard of it?
I have.
It's insane. It's like, I think it's like the best album of the year. It dropped. I was, Allison were skiing in Heavenly in Tahoe, and I put it on, put in my ears, put my AirPods, and I was jamming out the whole day. I was hitting every jump, everything. I was like so hungry that day because that soundtrack, it's cool. It's like experimental, kind of like grunge rap, and I think that's like rock. I don't know. It's just like a lot of great elements. I love that album. Just really high, fast paced. The samples are really off the wall, energetic. Love that album. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Gerry, of course you do like so much in the outdoor space. I mean, as we have, your boats behind us, anything that you vibe to while out on the water with musically, sonically?
Yeah, I mean, I do listen, like, I'm trying to think. Coaches, I love, I don't know, like, because it's just like,
it's a vibe.
Yeah, it's a vibe. It's like, it's that melodic and it's like a lot of repetition, but it's like, it's the vibe. So like, I'm trying to think. A lot of Drake for sure. Kendrick. And then I love like listening to Linkin Park. Linkin Park is like my favorite band. Like,
that's
like
awesome.
hands down. Like I've loved Linkin Park since I was like in middle school. So I really love that album they did, Hybrid Theory with Jay-Z.
Yeah.
And that's my vibe right there. And then this might seem like really like cliche millennial boy, whatever, but I freaking love Tame Impala.
Oh yeah, let's go.
I used to think that I was like I used to think like, oh, I'm like super, art house, like
Art Basel?
pop, like all that stuff for Tame, and then Tame all of a sudden became like
Mainstream.
mainstream pop, and I was like, oh,
We're unapologetic.
Yeah,
With the Tame Impala.
I love Tame.
Unapologetic.
Yeah.
You gotta be.
he just put out a song. I listened to it earlier today. I was with my dog with
Thundercat?
Thundercat.
Let's go.
Yeah, and it was really good. Yeah, so yeah,
Legendary.
yeah.
Oh,
I
man.
love music is a big part of like my life. So I love music. I have like my little soundtrack when I'm out paddling, and I have like a speaker on my boat, and I'll strap it to the bungees and listen to music and stuff. So
I love that. And it's a vibe. I mean, I know we used to go out when you were in Asheville, for sure, out and paddleboard, and like music just had to be present. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, being in nature and especially out on the water is one thing, but you throw some music on and it just like elevates everything.
Yeah.
With the right vibe, of course.
Yeah.
With context.
Yeah.
And especially like I do like a lot of like I used to race a lot and do long distance paddling, so I was out there alone, doing like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12-hour training paddles. So it it passed the time like really well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was able to live vicariously through you while you were skiing in in Heavenly. Yeah, I was watching those reels and was like, my guy.
Yeah. Heavenly was like amazing. Yeah, we got into skiing like really like a few years ago. I've gone like skiing and snowboarding a little bit in like my life before, and my buddy Andrew Dangler, he was a snowboard patroller at Paoli Peaks in Indiana, which is a Vail-owned resort now. But he took me out, and then I went before, growing up, like a few times growing up, and then as an adult. But then really, me and Allison really just got into it and just fell in love with it because it's a cool activity that me and her can do together. And so we were going like this winter, probably like once or twice a week.
That's awesome.
Up to Indiana. Then we were like traveling because parents. So a lot of people think about the skiing. They're oh, Jerry's big balling, and I was like, nah, bro. I was being strategic and like lining it up with like work trips and stuff like that. So that's how I was able to do what I was doing.
For sure. Oh, there's a winter sports conference. I'm there. Where is it at? Tahoe? Okay, I'll be there. Yeah.
Yeah, Park City. Yeah, that's how I was able to go to Park City. I spoke at the Snow Sports Industry Association's the OR Snow Show, and then we popped up to Park City. So, yeah. And then and I don't know if we get to it in the interview, but I'd love to talk about what we did in Vail
For sure.
and stuff too. So
Yeah. I mean, we're referencing so many talking points. I mean, we always want to communicate with the guest and just kind of learn a little bit about their first experience outdoors. I think for us, it was very formative of how we recreated together, but we had very interesting memories around our first meaningful experience outdoors. So I guess kind of turning that over to you, what was that moment where you're like, oh, this is beautiful, this is for me, this is an experience I'm going to, grasp onto for the rest of my life and something that I'm willing to share. So anything that's coming to mind for you?
yeah, I mean, like, I'm trying to think because it's like, I think, especially being a military brat, like, some people, because I've seen people in like different interviews and podcasts and things that are like, yeah, there was this definitive moment. And like for me, it was just like a baseline. It's all I had to do.
Yeah.
So I grew up as my mom and dad were in the Army, and so there was no mall on the base. There I was 30 minutes or so from like my civilian friends off base, and so that's what we did as kids. So like we had like, on the base there was like running track. There were, forest, there were like gyms, fitness center with swimming pools, pull-up bars, all that type of stuff. Like, and that's like what we did as kids. We'd go outside and we'd run, we'd go on the trail, whatever, and have fun.
Yeah.
And also like the military, because like, the job is so demanding, they try to also provide for families and help them out with like different fun things for families to do. So on the base, they have a thing called MWR, morale, welfare, and recreation. And so NWR operates a lot of the gyms on the base. They also provide like recreation equipment, like tents, backpacks, boats, all that type of stuff. So like we as a family, a lot of military families utilize those resources, and then they also would operate recreation facilities on the base, like a bowling alley, boat rentals, all kinds of stuff like that. So I really took advantage of that growing up. And my parents, like, it's funny because I do all this stuff these days. They didn't like. They were like, we didn't do all that stuff. We didn't we weren't super out. And I was like, but they didn't realize that they didn't. It was interesting because they didn't see it as that. Mm-hmm. They just saw it like, we're providing cool stuff for our kids to do, and then they never thought that I would end up doing what I'm doing now. But that was like what I remember. I will say a story is like this is before like Hokas were like created or whatever, or in trail running was like a vibe. But in Oklahoma, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, I just was like, I used to run a lot because I played soccer and all that stuff. And so there, across from my house, there was like a big forest, open plains. It's where it was an artillery range, and also like where they did like aerial bomb, a bombardment range. Huh. And I would go run on that range, and stuff like that. And I remember like one day, like a wild boar, like saw me and like kind of come charging at me. And I scampered up this like tree, and stood up there. I was up there for a while, but that's just like what I grew up like doing, crap like that on the base, and yeah.
As you were saying that, I thought about enrichment, in which like your parents were like providing those opportunities and the way in which that's influenced, the things that you do now, like from a recreation standpoint, but also enriching others as well with the opportunities that you provide to others. We, of course, with our kind of like long walk and engagement today, you mentioned some of the events that you've, created, that you've continued to develop, and the ways in which you give back to community. Let's jump into sharing some of that, as it sounds like the enrichment opportunities have directly influenced the work that you're doing there.
Yeah, so it's like interesting. So we need to. So I guess like backing up. So like, I feel like a lot of times with like conservation, it's very pedantic and personal. It's like it's all about like the resource and biodiversity and stuff like that. But there's like a lot of the people that are in that field, it's very impersonal. And I felt like if you want to get people to want to protect the resource, be stewards of the environment and stuff, you need to teach them. And a mechanism by doing that is outdoor recreation. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the framework that that a lot of my like work is like based on, is like, let's get people down to the river, let's get them to the trail, and let's talk about the biodiversity, let's talk about different species, let's talk about the issues that threaten this space, whether it's like erosion from human development, or someone's trying to build, this is a true story, someone's trying to reopen a limestone mine and build a conveyor belt across the river. Let's educate them on these issues and why this is like because that limestone mine could impact migratory patterns for bats and stuff like that. So like that was that frame. And then there was also like a justice component, because as y'all know, like a lot of systemically folks of color have been blocked, from accessing the outdoors. And so that's where a lot of my like framework comes from, my like work and stuff.
That's excellent.
Yeah. And I wanted to kind of even hop in between what you were asking, specifically around the Explore Kentucky brand. I know that that's meant a lot to you, and it means a lot to me as I got to know you more and more, Gerry, like being able to see the work that you've been able to do through Explore Kentucky and the importance of it. Could you explain, the framework of it? And
I love to do that. So I studied, in college, communication. So like documentary photography, photojournalism, broadcast, all that good stuff. And so I I hate this term. Like, so I was like a social media whiz kid or whatever. Like, because I really see comms as a science because it is, you know. And so like I was really intrigued by how can we. I was really intrigued by communication theory and stuff like that. And so I got really big into social and the analytics and the data behind it. And so I had an opportunity to work as part of the social media team for the Super Bowl in 2012 in Indianapolis.
Oh, wow.
Got to like dap up Snoop Dogg and like see Madonna and all that stuff. But I spent a lot of my time there, my days there behind an iMac, analyzing, crunching the data. Of it was really interesting because they had we were basically tracking user sentiment, where people were coalescing around, what celebrities were there, how people were reacting to their presence, photos, videos, all the stuff. We were helping curate the social media experience for those people that were visiting Indianapolis for the Super Bowl. And so I took that concept back to Kentucky, and I was like, man, we need like a really cool, dedicated digital campaign that promotes outdoor creation around this, or promotes Kentucky, because like Kentucky has like well, I think it's gotten better, has like a negative light around the country. Like people mention Kentucky and there's a little chuckle often. It's like, oh yeah, Kentucky, I don't know, like family members get together, or like people don't have teeth, and all these these tropes. And like for me as being a transplant, my eyes saw differently. I saw like a really beautiful state, beautiful mountains, rolling hills, rivers, great people and stuff like that. And so I was like, we need to do something. Let's change this. So I was like, let's take what they did in Indy and see if we can apply it back to Kentucky. And then there was also where, and sorry, like long-winded about this, where I dealt with like a lot of racism in Kentucky. It was something that I hadn't really encountered before in my life as heavily, because I lived in mostly diverse spaces from being a military brat, being in the Air Force and stuff like that. So I just went through some like trying times in college, just some really heartbreaking times. And so I was like, there was this issue of like where some folks saw Black people in a negative light. They were looking at like media representation and stuff like that. So I was like, had these things swirling in my mind, like, okay, like negative representation of Black people, negative representation of Kentucky, also this cool digital campaign. And then I was like, let's create something that promotes the state. And that was Explore Kentucky. And so it started out in my dorm room. I created an Instagram. I remember it was like October, or it was like September, October 2013. A few months before I was going to graduate college. Created an Instagram, and I just started posting like cool content, like where I was going around hiking and stuff. And I started reposting content too. And there was a little community. It was a little art house, very like a vibe community on there, because of the early adopters of Instagram were your photographers, your artists, your creatives and stuff. And so I got to meet all those, we had like, I hadn't met them, but we were messaging each other and commenting and like, oh, that's a dope shot in that frame. And then it just blew up. That Instagram account blew up. And I actually moved back to Georgia. So I graduated and went home to Georgia for a little bit. And I was driving between Georgia and Kentucky to keep Explore Kentucky going.
Wow.
So I would building Instagram and stuff. And then I got to a point, I was like, I don't want it to be just an Instagram. I wanted this to be a viable brand. And so I was like, sat down and thought about like, what does that brand look like? And so I was like, it's going to be focused on sustainable outdoor creation, biodiversity, getting people active, getting people outside. And that's like that's what it ended up being. And so I had the hashtag Explore Kentucky, and the little slogan like I had on Instagram was like, use Explore Kentucky to showcase your adventures around the state. And so I was showcasing like hikes, paddles, cool events, and it just built a large community, just blew up. And then people would invite me to come to like their community. They're like, I remember like I was gonna be in East Kentucky, and this guy and his family were so excited. And I got there and I did like a little interview with the TV station, and then they took I went 4-wheeling with him and his brother. They took me to meet their grandparents, all this stuff like that. And then I was in another community, and they were like, social media renaissance man. It was the headline of the newspaper. Social media renaissance man comes to Danville. And I had this picture of me in the Explore Kentucky shirt and my paddleboard. And so I got to be, I don't want to say like a mascot, but an ambassador for an outdoor recreation, because people hadn't seen something like that before on a statewide scale. And then in 2016, you're fast forwarding a little bit, in between 2013, 2016, when I started it, I was just kind of like traveling, figuring out life, being like, a 20-something-year-old dude, like, let's figure out, have fun, hike, all that stuff. Worked for the Nature Conservancy briefly within there, and left the Nature Conservancy. And I was like, I need to make a company. I had never done that. So I just like made an LLC. So I made Explore Kentucky LLC. And I was like, what is this company going to do? And so like one of my first, and I wish, and I'm hope like maybe I would love to show you all the poster because I have it in my house. One of my first events that I did as Explore Kentucky was at the Green Living Fair in Somerset, Kentucky, with a woman named Jamie. Shout out Jamie, and my friend Charlotte and David. But I hosted. We had like a little booth at the Green Living Fair. Charlotte baked like Explore Kentucky cookies. We did like a little. We had like, and we invited people from the Instagram. We were like, hey, we'll be at the Green Living Fair. Come get cookies, come hike with us. We'll have stickers, we have shirts and stuff. So Charlotte like pressed some like shirts and stuff. And it was one of my first events. And then my first festival that we ever did was in 2016. This is when I incorporated Explore Kentucky as a company. The state of Kentucky had given me some money to create like a film about rock climbing in the River Gorge. So I had lived in the River Gorge, which is a really popular place for rock climbing, like internationally. And so I had this little film, about rock climbing, and then Jim and Tina from Kentucky Heartwood, which is like a environmental conservation organization that protects our old growth forest here. They saw my film and they invited me to be a part of their film festival. And so that film showed at the film festival, and this librarian in Powell County, which is outside the gorge, she saw my film, and she was like, oh my gosh, Gerry, like I'd love for you to take my kids rock climbing for like in the summer for summer reading program.
That's huge.
And I was like, oh yeah, like we can do it. But then I like, again, being like 20 something, and I was like, yeah, we can. Then I realized, oh snap, liability insurance. Like, I'm not an AMGA certified guide. I'm an enthusiast, like I got a trip management, all this good stuff. Like, whoa. So then I was like, bet, like, what if we can bring the River Gorge to the kids? Mm-hmm. So what I did was I found a mobile rock climbing wall, and I had a buddy that was sponsored by Evolve, like the climbing shoe company. So I got him to come. They had Evolve shoes. So we put together a festival called In My Backyard, Red River Gorge, and it attracted over 300 people. We shut down the street in front of the Powell County Library, rock climbing wall, try on shoes. We had a Kentucky Mountain Biking Association, had like a little kids biking derby with ramps and obstacles. Bluegrass Wildwater Association, they had like whitewater boats and then a throw bag so you can test like, how far you can throw a throw bag. We had like pizza. In the library, we had like my friend Greg Davis, who's a really renowned waterfall photographer. He was doing like a photography workshop. And then we had Alex Honnold's book that just came out, Alone on the Wall, as one of the summer reading books for the kids and stuff. So it was all and that was one of the first events that I actually made I made a little bit of money, and and it was really cool. And so I guess like those Explore Kentucky question you asked is like it started to mean what's cool about Explore Kentucky is that it meant not just my thing. It meant a lot to different people for like what they. It was it's just like people felt like heartfelt around it. And then I started doing merch too. So like shirt. I had like just this basic logo. Explore Kentucky. My buddy Zach Hannibal made it. He's like a graphic designer that I met when I was working at summer camp. And so I reached out to Zach, and he helped me make the logo, and then just started selling shirts and stickers. And like I was trapping them out in my car, in my trunk, because like
Out the bando.
well, just it was because like so I got behind on orders. I just like it was like crazy. I got so behind on orders, and so like I would just I was traveling a lot, so I would look at people's address, and I'd be like, oh, do you live in Lexington? Meet me at Starbucks. I got your order here.
I'll hit you next week.
Yeah, like if I like you're in Louisville, come and like people did like I like message them,
awesome.
and they come and meet me, and we talk, and I have like friendships from that, like still. So it was really the basic things that I focused on with Explore Kentucky was doing really like badass events that get people outside, really cool merch that kind of gives a brand identity for the state. And then the other piece was providing like representation. Like this is like a black man that is like doing this and that, and I didn't realize that I was doing that, but I was like I started to see that like this is cool, like I need to lean into that, and I didn't want to, but at the same time I didn't want to lean into it too heavily because I didn't want to be like a token. Yeah.
That's super dope.
Oh man. Go ahead.
That's super dope. I got so much. Like I got so much to follow up with there as well. It's just like you threw like so many gems out there that like I don't want to let them go to like waste. Just like the like mention of like your network. Oftentimes people have that perception of like they have to be the everything for everyone. It's like you didn't have you weren't that person, but you had those connections. You mentioned the people that were in your network that like came together to support for launching that first event, as you alluded to. I mean, I tell people like the greatest measure is like who's in your network, like because admittedly I have tap bandwidth, you have bandwidth to an extent, but like those people are those that can like really execute and make things happen for the greater of all, so to speak. But I also love like the social movement, that just what seemed so trivial at that point in time, as you even like kind of like made it seem like a small thing, which at that point in time in your dorm room, I'm sure it was like firing up that Instagram, which I'm even like reminiscing on like the initial Instagram logo and like the evolution of Instagram. But I'm just thinking of like the movement that followed from that. I mean, from like starting in your dorm room to like launching events, serving 300 people and things of that nature.
Oh,
it's so dope,
Yeah. You say that the funny thing about it's because I remember like talking to our video folks here, but I was like really, what's the word? I was an Instagram hater because I was like a hardcore, like, photojournalist. And so like I was in my documentary videography course, and I was like, Instagram sucks because it was only for iPhones. So I had an Android at the time, and I saw people putting like the little filters and like the film. And I was like shooting, like a lot of us in like we're like videographers, photographers. We shoot film. We're like, got 35 millimeter because we're trying to like be a hipster and all that stuff. And so I was mad because like I saw people with their phones doing all this stuff like that, and I'm like. So, but then it became over for Android, and exactly what you said about community is like once I got it and it came for Android, I was like, oh snap, this isn't just a photo app, it's a freaking network. And I realized and I got to shout out I saw like different tourism campaigns, like there's this tourism campaign for Canada, but I was like, oh, this is a cool thing. I was like thinking about it, I was like, man, someone in China could see this really dope picture of a mountain in Kentucky, somebody rock climbing, and be like, oh, I want to travel there. And that was the framework that changed my mind. But yeah, and then you said about like the growth, like now, and admittedly because like I've had to step back and my life has changed, but Explore Kentucky currently has about 51,000 followers on Instagram. I think like over 200,000 plus hashtags and stuff. So it's like. It's crazy.
And it started in your dorm room.
It started in my dorm.
You know, that's dope, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to like let you jump in here, but I want to circle back to that.
Yeah, I mean, we missed the free game segment. We'll have to circle back, but you gave like
like,
20
that's
minutes
it,
of
yeah,
free game.
for sure.
That's a beautiful thing. You referenced a lot that gets me really excited just around the work that I do, but also the intentionality of like meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
You know, not everyone can go to Red Rocks either from an accessibility standpoint or just they don't have comfort within that space quite yet. So,
Yeah.
you know, that was a beautiful thing to hear, but also encompassing the educational piece around Alex Harnold's book, but also, hey, you know, read the book, climb the wall, like engage with community
Yeah.
in the most natural sense and in our own spaces. So I want you to definitely dive into that a little bit, but also be direct around the identity piece. You kind of like slid by that, but I think it's important to harp on. Like,
Yeah.
you're leading in a space that historically wasn't, you know, a space that represented us. And you did something that's so amazing, especially as we're defining a brand. It's like, you know, I even looked at you and say, like, that's a huge success story. And it's like a blueprint that we could follow
doubt.
and support organically. But you did this, you know, 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, you're a
So, like,
Gosh, you
pioneer.
make me feel
You're
old.
literally a pioneer.
Yeah,
for
you're a
us,
pioneer,
you know?
man.
Yeah, that's funny because it's like I felt I find myself a little jealous because I see people launching stuff now.
Yeah.
And what I realized, like you just said, I did it, but I think like now there's a lot more resources
Yeah.
for folks, especially like
For sure.
if you're like BIPOC underrepresented in the outdoor industry. There is like a lot of like startup monies, mentorship programs, and I didn't really like have that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the representation piece, you know, was very like I started to understand like how important it was. So you all see all my paddling gear here. So when I was in college, I worked at a camp called Pine Cove for a summer, and I fell in love with paddleboarding. So one day we were like, we had a break in Waco, Texas, and there were paddleboard rentals on the Brazos River, and so went out and did it with my buddies. So my buddies, Zach Daniel, designed the logo, and a bunch of people, and I just fell in love with paddleboarding. And so when I got home, when I graduated college and stuff, there's this guy in Georgia, Chuck of Whitecap Sup, and I called him up, and I was like, hey, just graduated college, don't have a ton of money. I can pay you monthly or something to borrow a board, like $50 or $100 or something like that. And he was just like, dude, he's like, don't worry about it. He's like, I got this like blue dumb board, plastic board. You can like use it. You can't have it, but you can use it. So I just used to go up and down the river, Savannah River in Georgia, by myself all the time, paddling that board, like on my car and everything. And I remember like people were like looking at me, you know, like, and my dad was like, you be safe out there and stuff like that. And I realized as I got more involved in the stand-up paddling community, it didn't look like us at all. And not diverse, you know, and I was viewed as like an anomaly or whatever. And I felt weird about it. And so I was like, you know what? I want to help teach us how to do it, like whatever.
Yeah.
So in 2015, I Googled and I found out about the American Canoe Association. So the American Canoe Association's been around since the 1800s, the world's oldest paddle sports organization, and they are they provide paddling education for our country. So I went down to Florida with this guy Todd Bishop, taught the course, and I got my first ACA cert, stand-up paddleboard, level 1 certification. And my goal with that was to take what I learned back to Kentucky and teach, communities of color and Appalachian rural communities how to paddle and all stuff like that. And I remember I'm jumping around timelines, but I did this interview. There's a show called Strange Fruit on the NPR station in Louisville. So it was two black hosts, and my episode was called Strange Fruit. Paddleboarding while black. You can't do that. And the reason why I was telling the host, I remember paddling on the river on the Ohio in Louisville, and there's a older black woman. She's like, "Baby, are you okay? Are you okay out there?" She's like, "You know we can't swim. You gonna be okay, baby?" And I was like, "I'm okay." And then I also my paddling, when I'm paddling around the state, there's people that try to like test me. So there's like some racist dudes out there, Confederate flags, all that stuff on their boats, and they will try to like run around throwing wake on my paddleboard, see if I'll fall off.
Yeah.
And so like there's two juxtapositions that it was happening. People seeing me, these people like, what is he like? What is he doing out there? All this stuff like that. And so I got those certs because I wanted to help teach and stuff. And so that was important because systemically we've been blocked from access to the waterways. And so yeah.
Yeah. And you have a lot of certifications.
I guess.
Just know my boy Gerry is nothing to be played with,
Yeah, and it was like, honestly, it was because like you're saying about like resources, or you were saying basically like I wanted to do that because I wanted to be able to provide a lot of different things. So I was like, if I'm going to do this, then I need to be the best, and I need to like be safe. So like, every year get my WIFA, wilderness first aid or wilderness first responder, got all that stuff. I got like my ACA, like coastal kayaking certification, got my canoeing certification, stand-up paddleboard certification, Project Wet certification, Project Green, Project Forest, all these different things to teach. So yeah, like I'm always about like education and stuff, and I think it's like key. And like jumping around like, a little bit, Marcus, is like when I first started to explore Kentucky, black folks, brown folks were missing. That's something that I noticed whenever I was going out I was looking at my like followership on Instagram. I was looking at like going out in public and who was showing up to events. It was not diverse at all. And I was like, man, like, what am I doing? And I realized it's because of, again, systemic, we've been disenfranchised from the outdoors. And so like, what I started to do was like, we need to like take what we know about the outdoor industry, throw that blueprint out. And so like for some of my events, it's stuff like I, have posters, putting up posters at the, the African barbershop, in the town, Hispanic grocery store, like just different spaces like that. Cause I was advertising for stuff at the outdoor store, and I realized like, oh, that's not where we're at. So we need to go to different spaces and get different folks. I also jumped into Outdoor Afro, if you are familiar with Outdoor Afro.
Yep. Yeah.
So I became an Outdoor Afro leader in 2017. And that was because I was trying to get that targeted outreach. And so Outdoor Afro, for the viewers or whatever, it's started by Room App as a blog, and it's transitioned to be a program that promotes Black leadership in the outdoors. And so you have to take folks on outdoor trips like once or twice a month, and that was that Outdoor Afro really helped a lot of. I didn't feel alone because I went to the Outdoor Afro training in Harpers Ferry, Virginia, West Virginia, and it was great because like I was like one black dude in Kentucky, and then I went to like a training with like almost 100+ black people like that from around the country that had hiked Appalachian trails, sea kayakers, whitewater boaters, national park folks. It was really cool. So
That's beautiful.
That's dope. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, Gerry, you mentioned, and what's continuing to be present is you mentioning bringing, kind of like bringing things to people. So
Yeah.
addressing access there. And I love just the gyms that you're continuing to, share and throw there from, everything from the initial story that you shared of bringing the climbing gym to neighborhoods to all the way from just changing the outreach that you're doing. I mean, I think it's as you kind of alluded to, it's hard to find new people if you're looking in the same places, so just a subtle adjustment of addressing like where you place your flyer makes the world of a difference for for information and access for people. So kudos to you for thinking outside of the box, even as like trivially as that may sound, of just like where am I going to put my poster, or like who am I going to talk to? That's critically important there. Throughout that kind of like journey and kind of this evolution of Explore Kentucky and just all the work that you're doing, like interpersonally but also organizationally, what have been some like revelations, some like learnings or things that you've had that you can impart upon, of course, the listener, but also for us as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think always like staying humble. That's something that I like. That's something that I always like try to do, is stay humble, because I've done a lot of stuff, but I think it's like important not to get like a big head, because I see like some people do that, and it can be detrimental and it takes away from the mission. But on the flip side, there's also, and I'm learning this now, like very much so now, is to be confident in like what your work in your work, and be proud of your work. It's okay to be proud, and I hadn't been like allowing myself to like celebrate that stuff, and like know like, hey, like you've done this stuff like that. And I think it's, and like it, once I realized I could do that and feel, I felt so much happier, and because it's like let me know like, oh, you've had an impact on people or whatever. The other thing I think is, it's important for us as Black people to kind of curate our own spaces. And what I mean is, and some people might be like, oh, like, what, you're trying to take us back and like segregation. And like, no, like what I mean is like, we need more representation in the outdoors. We need to have, Black owned businesses, Black, led nonprofits. We need to curate our own things, our own spaces and stuff like that. Owner things, Like Killer Mike said, like Killer Mike, own those masters.
Yeah.
Like
Agreed.
that's important.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think the curator standpoint, I think we've always brought that up in every podcast that we've had, is because people that we've interviewed have been so dynamic.
Yep.
Like they're doing the work at a community level. They're doing it individually, just like, hey, I want to be the best individual I can be for my community. And you've spoken on it thus far, like what does curation of the outdoors look like for the next generation? I mean, for me, I think of it in so many different fashions, and like I reference it almost every episode, is we're creating a space that, from an industry perspective, I think of Supreme. I think of like the brands that I wear out. It's like, you weren't in this space before.
Yeah.
You never were, until culturally we moved out of this hipster realm and was like, that's a beautiful Black culture. There's individuals that are elevating and collaborating, and Supreme and North Face collaborations can now be ours, like can look like us. And that was an intentional move. It had to be. I'm sure it brought monetary value, but you can now see that there's Black people leading in the outdoors, but there's also a cultural identity that's in a space. So I guess for you, like, what does that look like in the future? And I preface all this by saying you've already done some of this.
I mean, it's funny you brought that up, because I remember like it was the Drake Black Boy JB Look Alive. Drake had this, I think it was a North Face, or either it was a Polo NASA puffy jacket.
Yeah.
And it was, I remember like Googling, I like wanted to like get that.
Let me get that.
Yeah. I do that. And then like, I was talking about this in an education course I did like last year with Yvonne from Be Wilder. She needs to be on the show. But last year, or 2021, there's a big thing on TikTok with Arc'teryx.
Yep. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And there was a whole, like, there's these kids in London, they made a whole song like Arc'teryx on me. I go hike in Snowdonia. And there's a whole thing. People were going in the shower with their Arc'teryx and like
Gore-Tex waterproof.
Yeah, all that stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think like the curation for me, as someone that's like, worked at the community, the streets and the trenches, and that has like, matriculated now to be working like on a national scale, is I like to see the block flooded with funding. Like we need a lot more funding. Like I'm tired of like seeing people scrape and scrape for funding, and then you see, you know, nonprofits that have, you know, not, you see certain nonprofits have tons of money, flush with cash, and then they might bring in that community person organizer for like, hey, here's $1,000.
Yeah.
And, you know, but I want to see those folks funded. I want to see more diversity out on the trails, on the water, because that helps with like mental health. Like we have, you know, it's so important in public health. We need more stewards. You know, with climate change, especially, that's super important. And just more people having fun out there. You know, and then at the kind of like at the top level is, you know, you look around different like brands, trade associations, the CEOs, the trade association leaders, middle managers. It's predominantly white people.
Yeah.
And I want to see more Black and brown folks, more, you know, folks, you know, from, you know, indigenous communities, Latinx communities, Hispanic communities, you know, queer folks. Like I want to see more diversity in that space. And the reason like why is because more people, you know, people with disabilities. And the reason like why that's important to me is because then we get so much diversity in thought. Think about the product designs. Think about like, you know, for folks that are disabled, some people have a hard time with manipulating certain buttons, certain zippers, you know, certain, you know, how to use a paddle. But if you have more diversity in that space, then you have people that are thinking about different product designs and stuff like that. So that's super important. Or you think about like on the drip level, you know, like we love plaid. Plaid is great.
Speak for yourself, Gerry.
But it'd be really interesting to see more colorways. Like, you know, outdoor boots and shoes are like cool, but the colorways are so basic.
Yeah.
So we need to see like and then like also, it's just there's so many other different things from product design, to you know, where we're leveraging funding, because you know a lot of times brands will give a lot of money to conservation versus, you know, outdoor access programs. So there's just so many different things, and also so our kids can see it as a career path. You know, like, oh snap, I can like matriculate, become a park ranger. I can become, you know, a whitewater guide. So those are the things that I like look forward to seeing, and I think like right now, we're in a pretty good place. Like, you know, from when I started in 2013, I could like count on my hands how many like BIPOC, underrepresented groups I knew about. Now, there's a new one born every like day. Like, you know, indigenous people fly fish. You know, Black people who scuba dive and jump out of planes 24/7. Like all these different groups are like popping up, and so it's really cool to see.
I love that. And shout out to Arc'teryx. I mean, everybody here loves Arc'teryx. Just saying.
Arc'teryx is pretty lit. Arc'teryx, give us that love.
As I hide my jacket, right? It's like I didn't wear Arc'teryx today.
Impartial Arc'teryx is
No, but
like,
it's kind of crazy because it's like Arc'teryx just like it was just flipping through TikTok, and you see a bunch of Black kids buying Arc'teryx.
I love it.
In the shower.
I love that.
And they're like testing it out. Yeah, see, you got the authentic Arc'teryx. The water's beating up. You know that waterproofing's good.
I mean, Arc'teryx is for everyone. They got the Shiba Inu with the Arc'teryx jacket. You know, like we can go for days on what Arc'teryx is able to do.
Yeah.
But I did want to like also go back to the like clothing fashion perspective, because I wanted to slide in but not interrupt you.
Yeah.
The Gucci North Face collab with the coveralls.
I saw that.
Chef's kiss.
Yes.
Until you realize that they're $4,000, and I was like,
And see, that's the thing. Is like us being able to comfortably talk about that type of stuff is kind of cool, because if you think about it in the mainstream outdoor world or whatever, that's frowned upon.
yeah.
Like that is frowned upon. It's, you know, all about like dirt bagging and like, yeah, see, my gear got a freaking duct tape patch. I don't care.
Yeah.
And like for me, like I'm, you know, y'all like rugged. We like to get out there and do our thing, but I also like looking put together.
Yeah.
Like, like got my boat orange, and then I might be like, make sure that like, my paddle got some orange tape on it, or like my ski gear, I got a, POC helmet. And I love that helmet. It has a little orange stripe on the back, got my goggles, but the drip is important, but that's another way folks gatekeep.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're not a real outdoors person if you care about like drip or whatever.
As they say, that dog not on me, it's in me.
Hey, can't take it
Or as
off
they
me.
say, that drip not in me, that's on me.
Can't take it off me. No, I agree. But I feel like that's like part of some of the influence that's being like further infiltrated within the outdoor space is the brands that are co-opting the streetwear that's being integrated within not just within like urban cities, but also like I can go out in Pittsburgh and see like someone in Supreme riding their bike, and it's like that's dope. Like I don't even care like who you are, but like if you're wearing Supreme or if you're wearing Solomon shoes that are like a flex, I mean that's dope to me because like 5-6 years ago you couldn't see that like anywhere, and perhaps like the pandemic played a role in that with like more leisure and like streetwear and loungewear and things of that nature, and brands just got on board. But it could also more largely just be the culture. I mean, people such as us saying like, no, wearing this isn't like what I want to wear, and people speaking with their dollars, frankly, as well. So kudos to moving that forward. I mean, I'm all about like streetwear and looking good, whether on the course or off of it, so to speak. So that's awesome there.
Yeah, I remember so I do love my like, what do you call them? Convertible pants.
Your cargos?
Your cargo, yeah. And
Well, look at what we got here.
I think they're great. But like I love the utility, and then pairing it with something like I got my utility pants on, but let me make sure that my footwear is on point, and my hat or something. But I mean, I think we're in a really good place, and I see like a lot of cool stuff happening, like Roomap, Outdoor Afro. They just launched their line of stuff, and I really like that line a lot, and so I'd love to see more of that as we evolve. And I think that's we need to like be helping figure out how do we get kids into that pipeline, because it's like I think a lot of kids like see like, oh, like I can just Nike, Jordan or whatever, but I'm like, no, you can like this is an open lane, right here, outdoor gear and stuff like that. So. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, and it's all being like integrated within mainstream apparel. I mean, like Drake's Nocta line is like dumb now. The outdoor wear that is being created there, like even like a adjacent like really luxury brands and like activewear like Lululemon, like utilizing and collaborating with creators for outdoor wear as well. It's just like this scene is like budding, within functional wear, so to speak, and outdoor gear. I'm excited to see. I mean, I'm love the space that it's in now, but I'm excited to see where it continues to grow, not just within like Supreme and things of that nature, but with like just general wear, like North Face with Columbia, with brands such as that as well.
And we got he who should not be named. He was, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, he was doing his thing for a little bit, for a bit. Oh man. But I mean, it's really.
You don't have to say it. Everyone knows.
Or maybe we should say it.
No, we can't say it.
Nah, we'll leave that out. But
I mean, I'm really excited. I mean, again, I'm really excited about, and this is again, these like when I first started, these weren't conversations that I was like having with folks. Like I was like getting looked upon because looked down upon because I cared about different thing, different, the drip and everything. So I mean, I'm excited for the future, and it's just cool like where this all came from for me. Like I never saw myself sitting here. Like I never saw me like from my dorm room being able to do the stuff that I've done, because I thought that I was gonna be, I don't know, like I started like I graduated high school and I was interested in studying biochemistry, and then I kind of didn't want to study biochemistry, and I joined the Air Force and stuff like that. And then I got into journalism, and I thought that I was going to be like a really badass like New York Times journalist, photojournalist and stuff like that. But then like things like shifted and and it changed, and so now I'm here. So it's really cool, and I think that's a message that I would like to like leave to people is like you don't always know where you're going to end up. Like you don't have to have your life charted out. It will just kind of like collapse and find you.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, as we wrap, I definitely want to have the parting question be, "What's your next journey?" And that can be as broad as you want it to be. We think, yeah, we think of adventure and curiosity in multiple different fashions.
Yeah.
So, is that a trip? Is that a new venture? Is that something that you're actually like shooting for next?
Ooh. So I'll get to get some news. When does this air?
A few weeks from now, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We get to drop. Okay. So cool. Next journey. Yeah, I've had like a few journeys in my life, like serving the Air Force and working on fighter jets and stuff, and starting to explore Kentucky, and then serving as a coalition lead for Together Outdoors. Now my next journey is there's two things happening. So one, I did a soft launch on on LinkedIn the other day. So I started a new entity called Outdoor Recreation Design Lab. So around the country, I've been doing like work around the country, like paddling events, Community Paddle Sports Leadership Academy, which is this program. I wish we had a chance to talk about that. I'll share a little bit, but and maybe we can put it. But going back to the paddling stuff is, I felt like that there wasn't enough. There isn't enough like certified black and brown underrepresented instructors, paddle sports instructors, and so I've created this concept of called the Community Paddle Sports Leadership Academy, that trains communities of color and underrepresented communities to be paddler or leaders on the water, and so I have been doing like programs like around the country as Explore Kentucky. And it doesn't make sense. Like, okay, I'm in like Georgia, Gerry, Explore Kentucky.
Yeah.
And so I kind of pulled like thought about it like 3 years ago, came up with the name. But y'all know like how Facebook became Meta, right?
Yeah.
And Google became Alphabet. So like that's kind of like what Outdoor Creation Design Lab is. It's housing all the work I'm doing under the Design Lab. And the Design Lab is focused on, it's a hub, and it's like for my like I'm a social artist, so it's a hub for my work in social artistry, brands and projects that I work on. So like Explore Kentucky is under that, the Community Paddle Sports Leadership Academy work, my speaking gigs, workshop development, cool projects, different things with different brands, whomever. That's all under the Outdoor Creation Design Lab. I'm gonna figure out how to make a sub LLC, so that's one piece, the Outdoor Creation Design Lab. I'm really excited about that. The other piece is I got a new job. As of June 1st, I will be the Associate Federal Director for the Sierra Club's Outdoors for All campaign.
Oh wow.
Dope.
Shout out to my guy. Let's go.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. So yeah, I applied for the role back in December and went through a very lengthy interview process and stuff like that. And then towards the end it got fast, and I had my last interview when I was at the International Trail Symposium in Reno a few weeks ago, and then it was on a Friday, and then a few days later on like Tuesday, it was Monday, and I had like they offered me the role. And then I had an offer letter like within the next few days. But yeah, so June 1st, I'll start that role. And the Sierra Club, as y'all know, started by John Muir.
Interesting.
John Muir has been around since like the 1800s, and they have been doing a lot of work around John Muir's legacy, because like he was really renowned conservationist, but his views towards indigenous people and stuff like that. So they've been doing a lot of work of breaking down their monuments and all that stuff. And I've admired this Sierra Club since I was a kid, for all their work. And so I'm just really excited to be part of such a storied organization now. And so the Outdoors for All campaign it is the Sierra Club's focused on outdoor equity. So there's a few programs under it, like Military Outdoors, which involves getting military families and veterans outside, Nearby Adventures, Inspiring Connections, and then Oak, which is Outdoors Alliance for Kids.
Yeah.
And so I'll be helping manage federal policy initiatives for outdoor equity across the country. So I mean, like,
I'm so hyped.
I'm
man.
just,
Let's go.
I just can't believe it.
Congratulations.
Like, yeah. So, man,
Man.
So I feel blessed, man. And the fact that they're letting me stay in Kentucky, and I don't have to like move to DC. So yeah, hype about it. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, congratulations, man.
Thank
I'm
you.
so happy for you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Agreed.
A huge impact with the friends that I have that I'm sure you already know or will be friends soon. Like Garrett Dempsey from Detroit Outdoors and some colleagues. Yeah,
I heard about because Sarah, from Outdoors
yeah,
Empowered.
yeah.
It was and then a lot of folks are going to be at Oak Week
Yeah.
in a few weeks, and so I'm really excited because it's.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I want to shout out Marcus. Like, man, like Marcus is like, has held me down for, since I've known him, and just been a really just great leader and stuff like that, and advocate and for the work. So just excited to continue building. And I mean, you, man, like, just excited to continue building like this community. And I'll say this about this job, like, again, I never saw a job like this happening.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know like you could have a job like this. There wasn't roles like this in 2013. I'm pretty sure, and like I'm just excited this even exists. Like, holy cow.
Yeah. Putting on my professional hat with all the colleagues like around the nation, and it's like I'm super happy for you just from a perspective of people in positions to lead that I know are doing quality work for our community.
Yeah.
And that could be from a grassroots level, making that policy for DC that's going to affect us most pertinently and on a ground basis, but thinking of it at scale from an accessibility, mobility, inclusion standpoint. Like, you are one of those that I know will be considering that literally every day of your work. So I appreciate you being in that role to have a colleague in that space.
Yeah, thank you all. And I know as we're wrapping, but I think like why I'm excited about that role is because, like you said, like, from being around DC and stuff like that, I feel like a lot of policy folks especially are so DC
Yeah.
focused. And like, for me, I'm literally focused on the trenches. What's happening in the trenches? What's happening in communities and stuff like that? And I want to really bring that perspective is like, I need to do my DC thing, talk to legislators,
Yeah.
and hobnob and do what I need to do when I need to. But I really want to figure out, how can we make policy, how can we get average citizens involved with policy? How are we taking what we're learning on the ground, how are we engaging them, and then creating that to make the policy? That's going to be like my goal and the big experiment that I want to do with this role. This job is doing that, because like it's just important to like make sure that we're not just stuck in the beltway. So I feel like, just from what I've seen in the interview process, how they did it and the work they're doing, that it's going to be a good home for this work. And just really excited and like just like especially like Oak, like the Outdoors Alliance for Kids. Like, I've known about Outdoors Alliance for Kids for years. So just it's a cool space. So really stoked about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we've been saying we're going to wrap up
Yeah.
over and over, but we
so
do,
much good, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, we could circle back around.
Yeah.
We always want to leave the door open for you to give shout outs to whoever, and however many you want to do. So,
Jeez. Okay. Shout out my cousin Ray. No, I'm just kidding.
Shout out Peanut.
Shout out to my mom, Jamie, and to my dad Samuel. They, very foundational for me. Like, they sacrificed a lot, for me, my brother and my sister. And, they didn't, I don't think they know, like, I don't think parents understand the true impact they have, on us. But like, just them as Black parents doing stuff like making sure like our homework was like checked. and like making sure like that we weren't just doing math and my dad was working out the formulas like, oh, that's wrong. Like, not just making sure that you like filled it out, but making sure like the stuff was right. My mom checking like my essays because she's big on communications and English, so checking my essays. So like just really and allowing us to travel. Like we traveled a lot as a kid. We lived in Germany, and we got to see a lot of things, go to different museums, and they took us to DC when Rosa Parks passed away. Wow. And we got to see like her in the bus, and because they put her casket in the bus, and they did a whole thing. So they made sure that we were culturally aware of like who we are and proud of ourselves and stuff like that. That was really important to them. So I want to shout out my parents. And then, a lot of my college professors, like they nurtured my interests, like my academic advisor, Stan McKinney, he's, longtime newspaper journalist. And there wasn't a lighting course at my college. And so we did an independent study, just me and him. And for a semester, we just worked on different lighting situations. Like I was like, hey, I want to get more steezy, learn more about lighting. And he's like, we don't really, we have like a broadcast course, but I was like, no, I needed more than that. So we got an independent study, and we just met a few times a week, set up different lighting situations, and stuff. So Stan and Russell Barkley, Jeannie, all our professors and stuff like that. Clay Hill Memorial Forest, which is a research forest at my college. The Air Force really helping me with discipline and stuff like that. And so many different people, and then my outdoor career, I mentioned, we do this podcast, or show, I've tried to shout out people. Danica Carey, oh gosh, Danica, just meeting her in 2021, Danica and Serious Innovation, and Wendy and Mike, her parents, they are inspiration. Of course, Marcus, man, and Jamaica, Yvonne, Brianna, Ambreen, Siren, Crystal Egley. Lydia. Don't let me forget Lydia and Jimmy.
Yeah, you can't. No, you can't.
Can't forget.
I'm just kidding. All love Lydia.
Lydia. I can't forget Lydia. But so I would say these past few years, especially leading together outdoors and stuff like that, it's been really beautiful for me getting to meet people on a national scale. Mm-hmm. So let's say this: everybody that I've met the past few years. Annie Gow.
It's all love.
All love y'all. Dan West from Rivian. All these different people, shout out. And then Shawana Kendrick and Liana, Naquana Moore, Zenobia, George, Lizzie, Anna Levesque. These are all just people I've done cool projects with. So I just don't want anybody to be like, yo, he didn't shout us out. Everybody I've ever done a project with. Brad Collette.
Even in third grade.
Tennessee, shout out.
It was left in.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. And then, most importantly, is Allison, so my wife, Allison, we've been together since 2015. Throughout, my journey, we explore Kentucky and all that stuff. She's been there for me, and I've been there for her. And it's not. And what's interesting is not in the sense of she's just moral support. I was telling her the other day, I was like, you're basically an outdoor industry employee.
Yeah.
No, literally, I'm doing my festivals. She's there checking people in, loading up equipment in the car, helping me hook the trailer up. Proofreading, if social media posts, if I need proofreading or press release stuff, so Allison, she's really, I love her to death, but she's been great. And again, we need to give her, she's a nurse, but she's an honorary, what do you call it? COO. She's my, chief operating officer. So yeah.
Sweet. Any final words before we wrap?
No, man, it's just been awesome, Jerry, spending the day with you, man. Getting to know you better and to hear more about your story. Admittedly, I think that just feeds the appetite and the interest across so many paths for people. I mean, you threw out so many good gems out there of not you don't have to know everything at all times, but also like small ideas can manifest to be major revelations and impactful for others. So I'm excited to share this with our audience and for others to get to know you better that don't have that connection with you or with Explore Kentucky to get involved and to become engaged and for all the work that you're stewarding to influence them across a number of different capacities, as you alluded to with all the objectives with Explore Kentucky. So excited to share that broad scale here.
Cool.
Yeah.
And as always, it's a wrap. All love.
We did it.